Hello there film fans, I'm back and it's time for a review of Ted 2. So the basic overview plotline picks up from the first movie. Ted is married to Tammy Lynn and then he finds that his human rights are questioned as to whether or not he is actually a person or if he's property. If he's property, he's not allowed to be married to a person, he's not allowed to adopt a baby, and so him and his gang go up against the legal system to try and win him human rights. His gang consists yet again of Mark Wahlberg, who is newly single and still a waster, and a stoner lawyer they've picked up played by Amanda Seigfried, which seems an unlikely match but kind of works. Where I'm at with this is that I quite enjoyed the first Ted, didn't love it, didn't think it was as funny as some people thought it was, but thought it was okay. However, I have been a fan of Family Guy for at least 10 years and like everyone else was pretty disappointed by A Million Ways to Die in the West. I don't know if anybody enjoyed it. There was one bit I enjoyed where Neil Patrick Harris had like a pun off about sheep, as I remember it, that was quite funny, but aside from that, not great. Mark Wahlberg's still pretty good at interacting with, let's face it, a non-existent, crude, rude and lewd CGI bear, but I do find his accent a bit irritating. Does anybody really talk like that, or is he just doing an impression of Peter Griffin? Amanda Seyfried's fine. Kind of feels like they had Mila Kunis in the first one, so they needed another big-eyed girl to fit the part, so they got her in, but yeah, she was better than I expected. The theme music, which shows an elaborate song and dance routine, I imagine is designed to remind you of the opening credits for Family Guy. It was quite long, quite impressive, except for that Ted was there. He kind of spoilt it. As a massive My Little Pony fan, I was happy to keep seeing the My Little Ponies pop up all over the place. This film appears to have been sponsored by Hasbro. I don't know if they have some rights over making the Ted dolls. However, they don't come out of it looking particularly great, which makes me wonder why they agreed to that. I mean, there's a lot of them in it, but it's not terribly positive. The movie's just about as rude as I expected. Not quite as funny as I would have liked. I think that the first edition was funnier. I think there was 4 or 5 laughs, maybe. The general plotline also did remind me of an episode of Family Guy. I'm sure there's one in which Brian has to fight for his civil rights. It did feel a bit of a rehash. However, we say plotline in the loosest possible sense because, as we used to with McFarlane to some extent, this was basically a load of little skits tied together. I actually noticed there were whole scenes that could have been cut out and it wouldn't have affected the plot at all. I kind of wonder if the way that Seth MacFarlane does these disjointed little scenes is to represent that it's aimed at a stoner culture and that they have these short-term memory blips, maybe. There are quite a few little cameos. One in particular of note I would say would be Liam Neeson. He is quite high up the credit list if you look on IMDb. I did find his cameo quite amusing, but ultimately it didn't come to anything. It was again a little blip. Even when you look at the dramatic climax of the movie, that felt like it was inserted out of nowhere and didn't really fit with the overall storyline. It was just a rehash of the ending of the first film, really. There was one scene I wasn't crazy on, which was a domestic violence scene between Ted and his wife. That in itself I find distressing enough, but there was some implication that the way to resolve problems in a relationship is to have a baby. To me, that's a horrible message. You shouldn't, if you're having problems, you certainly shouldn't introduce a child into it. Didn't seem appropriate to me. At the end of the day, screw whether Ted has human rights or not. I don't want an adopted baby going into a family situation with an abusive teddy bear for a father. Overall, it was just fine. Some of it was a bit offensive to me, some of it was quite amusing. Overall, felt a bit blah. But what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and do remember to subscribe to my channel.